Hello house lovers, welcome to the wonderful Bonaccord house on this brisk but charming spring morning. Let's go inside, but first a quick detour in the shrubbery, and my pea crop is coming along really well. In case you've forgotten, which I'm sure you haven't, but I dug out all that soil and I laid down some pea straw mulch, and all the peas have germinated, which is great because they are nitrogen fixers and will help nourish the soil so I can plant a garden. But enough of my peas, let's go inside. Aha, let us talk about, house lovers, plaster. As you know, because you have been watching assiduously, I have been stripping the hallway of 148 years of wallpaper and paint, and I think there is 5 layers of wallpaper and God knows how many layers of paint. Why? Well, we went through that because wallpaper is an unstable surface, so you really need to strip it off to be able to see what the surface is, and our surface is classic hard plastering. And what is that? Well, it's old school. You have brick internal walls, then you have a layer of a sand-based sort of cement, and then you have a fine layer of gypsum plaster over the top, which is your surface then. That was the traditional way until the invention of plasterboard. Most of our walls are plaster, hard plaster, but some, well, a few, one is lath and plaster. Let's go and look at that. What is lath and plaster? I hear you crying. Well, it is lath and plaster. It's an ancient technique. It's probably, well, it's medieval, but it might even be, I'm sure it is. It's like wattle and daub. It's ancient building technique, and here it is still in the modern era. So lath and plaster is quite simply, you have joists. Often it was used in a ceiling. You have timber joists, and you have these fine little wooden struts, laths, which are nailed across like batons with a small gap in between. You then have a layer of a thick cement-based plaster, which would knead in between those laths and form a surface, and it was tied together with horsehair. Can you see that? Goodness me, just imagine this horse 150 years ago. My goodness, maybe we could clone the cells from its hair and grow the horse again, assuming it is a horse. Oh, anyway, let's not go there. Animal hair was used to knit together this plaster to form a more solid form to allow it to tie to the batons, the laths, which were then covered in a finer gypsum-based plaster to give you your finished decorative surface. As you could imagine, quite labour intensive. In the late 19th century, someone in England invented plasterboard, which is layers of plaster between, I think it was felt and paper fibre in those days. Anyway, by the 1950s, it was in industrial production, and then by the late 50s, basically plasterboard had taken over. Obviously, it was much cheaper and much faster and much more efficient to bang up both for walls and for ceilings. This is the original lath and plaster ceiling, and this is plasterboard that was attached to it in the 60s. And actually, these holes in the floor give us a great indication of how the ceiling is constructed, because we can see the downstairs ceiling. You can see the laths stretching across, and then you can see the thicker plaster that's oozing between them. So our ceiling downstairs is just that. But obviously repairing such things became an issue, hence in the 1950s and 1960s, when people were restoring or repairing ceilings such as this in a house of this age, they just slapped up plasterboard on top of the original plaster ceiling to keep the flaking old bits in place and then to give you a new, fresh surface. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? The eternal question. So the first thing is hard plastering. Now, when I was a youth, moments ago, plastering was very common as a trade. If you had, as was bricklaying, which is now also not common as a trade. And hard plastering has actually become almost like an artisanal skill, which is kind of ironic, but at least it exists. What we're going to be doing then, not obviously, we are going to be repairing the original plaster surface. And one of the great things about using plaster now is that you can mix pigments with it and mica and minerality, Venetian plaster, so you have a slight shimmer. You can color the plaster so you don't have to paint, and you can have quite deep reflective layers. It can be quite beautiful and quite subtle. So we're going to play around with some of those techniques and see what happens. I've stripped the hall because it needs to have a stable, clean surface underneath. Tedious task. I may have poisoned myself slightly. I had a few headaches, but we won't go into that either. And don't tell the good doctor. Anyway, luckily in the rest of the house, there isn't wallpaper. It's just been painted and painted and painted and painted and painted. All we have to do in these rooms is sugar soak them, wash them down, and then you lightly abrade them, so like a rough sandpaper to create a surface, and then you can skim over it if you need to, or you can just patch and fill the areas where there's cracks and damage. So luckily for the rest of the house, the hard plasterer can come and fix it. And the first use of plastering is 7,500 BCE in Jordan, where basically the same kind of materials were used, crushed lime and gypsum, to produce a smooth surface for wall, ceilings and floors. Nothing has changed. For the new parts of the house, we are going to use gyprock plasterboard with a plaster skim over the top. The ceilings, TBC, not quite sure how we're going to go about doing that, but we are not going to lath and plaster them. Now, if you have a period house that's fabulous and important, you might A, have to because of heritage laws, or B, want to repair the lath and plaster. And you certainly can. There are people that can do that. It is laborious and labor intensive, and you can do it yourself though, because God invented YouTube and there are videos of people repairing it, but you can get specialists who come in and do that. So again, it depends on the period of your house, what you want to do and what you need to do. If it's a listed house, you might have no choice but to repair those old surfaces. This isn't, and the interiors aren't. We are about making it sound and strong and waterproof and long lasting. Which brings us back to the very beginning, which sounds very Sound of Music, and my stripped plaster wall. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying tuned. Thank you for hitting like and subscribing if you're interested. Please feel free to ask a question. I am not an expert, but figuring my way out as we go with this beautiful old house here in Melbourne. Thank you very much. Take care wherever you are. Things are still rocky. Be kind to yourself. Enjoy the homes that you're creating as I am, and I will see you next week.